Well, I would describe the first nuclear deterrence challenge for you to think about as the Austin, Texas problem. And this is a year ago. You may recall that the United States flew a couple of nuclear-capable bombers into Korean airspace. This was in response to the sharp rise in belligerent, threatening behavior by Kim Jong-un. And the flight was intended to signal to South Korea, basically, that we had its back and that the nuclear umbrella was strong and reliable. The North Koreans responded with a bunch of propaganda, naturally enough. There was one YouTube video that they released, you may have seen, which was of a sleeping young North Korean man dreaming of participating in the nuclear strike on New York City. And, you know, the city bursting into flames and people dying in the fires, and then he's peacefully, restfully back in his North Korea nirvana at the end. Another piece of their propaganda was a television display of Kim Jong-un meeting with his military leadership. As propaganda, it played kind of poorly because they wear these really big hats in the North Korean military that look kind of silly to us. But against the back, they were seated at a table, and against the back was exactly what you would see in the basement at Strategic Command in Omaha, which is a giant map, a targeting map, of aim points for nuclear missiles. And the entire map was of the continental United States, and the aim point that was most clearly visible in the picture that was taken was Austin, Texas. And so this first nuclear deterrence challenge we have in today's security environment is the emergence of a new set of actors who believe they might be able to reach out and touch the American homeland in time of crisis and war. It would be utterly foolish of them to actually conduct a nuclear attack on Austin, Texas, or anywhere else. But nuclear deterrence is very much a game of shadows and blackmail and brinksmanship. And we live in a world in which a young man of less than 30 years old, whose reputation as being a bully on the basketball court, who was responsible for the sinking of the Cheonan and the artillery fires on the South Korean islands 2 or 3 years ago, this young man now has this capability at his disposal. The Iranians might not be far behind. This is a very different kind of nuclear deterrence problem for us. Second big challenge, highlighted by the Ukraine incident of the last few days. You know, we the United States have the view that since the end of the Cold War, relations with Russia and China ought to keep improving. We aren't enemies, not in the way we were in the Cold War. We're not allies. We have an awful lot of common interests, economic, more common economic interests with China than Russia, but still some with Russia. We have a lot of shared interests in regional stability. With Russia, we have the shared interest of stability in the Middle East and Europe. And with China, we have a shared interest in regional stability in Northeast and Southeast Asia. Lots of common interests. And we've asked that in our nuclear, we've sought as a policy matter how to structure the relationship with these two countries in the strategic military domain, in the nuclear domain, in a manner that supports our political objective of continuing to improve these relationships. Well, as you can see, Russia and China haven't been very willing partners in this activity. We, the United States, have believed since the end of the Cold War that we could continue to shed nuclear weapons, that the arsenal we built up in the Cold War is too big for the world we live in. And Russia is not interested in further reductions, on the contrary. And China is building up its nuclear force. And they have a vision of the military relationship that serves their political objective. Their assessment is that we, the United States, are a bully, that we are driven by our values. This makes us unpredictable. We're not driven by interests exactly, we're driven by values. We're all over their neighborhoods, and we threaten to intervene in their vital interests. And they've all read a Pentagon document written in 2000 called Joint Vision 2020, which is a wonderful vision, if you're an American military planner, of what you want the future military force to look like. And it says that what the United States seeks in the military realm is the ability to dominate an adversary in any domain, ground, undersea, maritime surface, air, space, cyber, nuclear, missile defense, dominate. And that we should have the freedom from attack and the freedom to attack. Well, these are great objectives if you're a military planner, but if you're sitting in Beijing or Moscow, it sounds like the great big bully's coming to get you sooner or later. Their argument is that we are seeking, quote, absolute security for ourselves, which means absolute insecurity for anybody who isn't our friend. So they're working very hard to ensure that their deterrents, including their nuclear deterrents, are credible in the face of our attempts to coerce them. And this is all fine and dandy. It's wasted money from our perspective on their part if there is no real potential for conflict between us. But the incidents with China in the seas, the maritime disputes, their lust for war with Japan, which is the only right word to describe it at the moment, and Putin's deep fear of color revolutions, particularly a color revolution that might come to Russia, these are the seeds, these are the potential military flashpoints in our relationship. Not that would lead us necessarily to nuclear confrontation, but where they are confident that they can employ force against our allies and against us, and we will back down because their threats are more credible than ours. This isn't the rosy picture that we Americans would like to paint of this, and I think there's going to be a good deal of soul-searching in the years ahead about how to posture ourselves in the nuclear and missile defense area to get what we want with Russia and China.